Think about the last time you were overlooked. You stayed late, you delivered, you showed up completely, consistently, without hesitation. And the response? Silence, indifference, or something worse. You were treated like a placeholder, like someone easy to skip, like someone even easier to replace. That feeling doesn't just sting, it settles. It moves into the quiet corners of your day and waits there. And somewhere in that stillness, a question starts to form, sharp and uncomfortable. Does any of this actually matter? Before we go further, if you've ever felt that weight, drop the word clarity in the comments right now. Because what you're about to hear might be exactly what this moment in your life has been asking for. Here's what almost nobody says out loud about being underestimated. It is not the real problem. The real problem is the response it triggers. The instinct is to try harder, perform louder, make yourself impossible to ignore. And for a while that drive wears the mask of strength. It looks like ambition. It feels like momentum. But Stoic philosophy teaches something that cuts beneath all of that. The moment you begin performing for the approval of people who undervalued you, you have already surrendered the one thing they never deserved access to, your inner compass. Their perception has become your direction. And that quiet handover, that invisible surrender, is something most people never recognize in themselves until it's already cost them something real. The ancient Stoic thinkers returned to one distinction more than almost any other: what belongs to you and what never did. Your effort, your character, your choices, entirely yours. How other people interpret those things, that was never in your jurisdiction to begin with. And this is not a comforting idea designed to soften disappointment. It is a precise, rational observation about the architecture of reality. You can write the most thoughtful proposal your team has ever seen and watch it be dismissed before the second slide. You can be the most consistent presence in someone's life and still be the last person they consider. You can build something genuinely worth noticing and spend years watching people walk past it without breaking stride. None of that measures your worth. Every single one of those moments measures theirs. And the Stoics trained their minds to hold that difference, not emotionally but clearly, like a fact, like weather data, like information that belongs in the calculation, not in the wound. Now here's where it gets important, and I need you to stay with this, because most people stop right before the real insight arrives. When someone finally recognizes your value, after the silence, after the indifference, after treating you like a backup option, there is a single moment that redefines everything. Not their words, not their timing, your response. Most people, the moment recognition finally arrives, feel relief wash through them. They soften, they open, they think, finally, they see me now. And in that exhale, without noticing it, they return to exactly the position they were in before. Available, warm, back at the beginning. The Stoic never does this, not from coldness, not from resentment, but because something irreversible has already happened. The absence taught something that the presence never could. Stoic philosophy is unambiguous on this point. Character is not revealed in the comfortable moments. It is revealed precisely when showing up costs something, when staying requires effort that leaving would not, when the easy path and the right path are not the same path. Anyone can value you when you're useful. Anyone can be generous when it's convenient. The question the Stoic asks is not whether someone came back. The question is what they did when staying was harder than walking away. That answer, written in behavior, never in words, is the only honest answer available. And once you've read it clearly, you cannot pretend you haven't. If this is landing for you, take a second to like this video. It helps more people find this conversation when they need it most. Let's talk about what genuinely shifts in a person who moves through this experience without losing themselves in it. They stop measuring themselves through external confirmation. And this is more significant than it sounds, because most people are running a constant background process without realizing it. Did they respond? Did they acknowledge it? Did they treat me the way I deserved? When that process is active, your emotional state is tethered to a source you cannot control. You have outsourced your stability to someone else's behavior, and that is not vulnerability. It is a structural flaw in the foundation. The Stoics spoke of what they called the inner citadel, not a metaphor for toughness, a precise description of sovereign emotional territory. The part of you where the external world holds no jurisdiction. No opinion can enter without your permission. No silence can colonize it. No absence can govern it. That citadel is built through self-knowledge, through action aligned with your actual values, through the practiced discipline of not needing the moment to be different than it is. And when someone overlooks you and your foundation doesn't shift, that is not detachment. That is sovereignty. That is the citadel functioning exactly as it was built to function. The silence of another person is never a void. It is a test of character, theirs and yours, and the Stoic reads it as exactly that. Information, not injury. Here is a modern truth that most people sense but rarely articulate. We live inside a system of constant measurement, metrics, performance reviews, social validation, engagement numbers, all of it generating an invisible pressure that insists your value requires external confirmation to be real. And when that confirmation doesn't come, the temptation is to wonder whether the value itself was ever there. The Stoic answer is not to disconnect from feedback entirely. That would be arrogance, not wisdom. The Stoics trained themselves to do something far more precise: separate signal from noise with discipline and without ego. Honest information that helps you improve. Signal, someone's failure to recognize what you bring because of their own limitations, their own timing, their own self-interest. That is noise. It was always noise, and noise, by definition, never belonged to the signal. The interpretation of others was never yours to carry. It never entered your jurisdiction to begin with. Imagine a navigator crossing open ocean. No satellites, no digital instruments, nothing but stars, training, and a fixed destination. Every day the conditions changed. Storms arrived without warning. Currents pulled against the hull. Wind shifted direction without permission. The navigator did not argue with the storm, did not take the current personally, did not alter the destination because the weather disagreed with the plan. They absorbed the information, adjusted the course, and kept moving toward where they had already decided to go. The people in your life who failed to see your value are weather conditions. They are not your destination. The moment their recognition becomes the measure of your direction, you have stopped navigating. You have started drifting. Subscribe to Stoic thoughts if this kind of clarity is what you want more of, because that is precisely what this channel is built for. There is a common misreading of Stoic emotional discipline that needs to be addressed directly. Not reacting does not mean not feeling. The Stoics were not building emotional walls or training people into numbness. What they were developing was something far more sophisticated: the space between what arrives and what you choose to do with it. You can feel the sting of being overlooked without letting it script your next move. You can feel the warmth of finally being seen without letting it dissolve the standards you built in the silence. The feeling is real. The feeling is information. But you, and only you, decide what that information authorizes. That space between stimulus and response is not emptiness. It is where your character actually lives. And the Stoics believed that expanding that space through deliberate practice was one of the most important investments a person could ever make in themselves. When people finally realize your value, something in the dynamic shifts. They become more careful, more present. They reach out. They acknowledge what they previously moved past without a glance. And in that moment, it can feel like a kind of arrival, like the world has finally caught up. But the Stoic never reacts the same way twice. And this is the center of everything. Not because of calculation, not because of walls, but because of a level change that already happened, quietly, privately, during the period when no one was watching. The experience of being undervalued and choosing not to collapse into it, choosing instead to rebuild from the inside out, that process did not leave the same person standing at the end of it. This is not a door being closed as punishment. The door has simply been rehung at a different level. It opens differently now. It requires more, not as a demand, not as retaliation, but as the natural reflection of someone who has genuinely become more, not in anyone else's estimation, in their own. That is not bitterness wearing the mask of strength. That is what self-worth actually looks like when it's been earned, not performed. Ancient Stoic thinkers held this belief with consistency. Every difficulty carries inside it a specific kind of instruction that cannot be delivered any other way. Not through books, not through advice, only through the friction of real experience pressing against your character and showing you, precisely and without flattery, what is actually there. Being overlooked teaches you the real cost of your effort. Being taken for granted teaches you the actual weight of your presence. Being treated as replaceable teaches you exactly who remains when the obvious value is not on display. None of those lessons arrive gently, but every one of them is permanent. And in a world that rearranges itself without notice, permanence is one of the most valuable things a person can carry. If someone in your life is only now beginning to recognize what you bring, after absence, after indifference, after a season of treating you like an option, the Stoic question is not simply whether they deserve another chance. That answer belongs to you alone, and no philosophy should make it for you. The Stoic question is this: who are you walking into that decision? Are you the version of yourself still searching for their validation to feel complete? Or are you the version who has already made peace with the experience, with that person's limitations and with your own value, entirely independent of how it has been received? That distinction does not just change what happens next. It changes everything about what next even means. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Not because it holds all the answers, but because sometimes the right words at the right moment return us to something we already knew and had simply forgotten how to hold. The Stoics never promised fairness. They never taught that the right people would always arrive at the right time, or that the world would eventually organize itself around what you deserve. What they taught was this: it is possible to build something inside yourself so grounded, so genuinely yours, so independent of external conditions, that the world's inconsistency stops being a threat. It becomes something you simply move through, clearly, calmly, without waiting for permission. When people finally realize your value, let them find you already there, not performing, not proving, not positioned at the door hoping to be let in, already whole, already decided, already exactly who you chose to be, long before their recognition ever arrived. If this video left something with you, a thought, a word, a moment you recognized in yourself, leave it in the comments. This community is built on that kind of reflection. And if you haven't subscribed to Stoic Thoughts yet, this is where that conversation lives. We'll see you in the next one.